Okay, we are back in the building, people. I've been away for a minute, but I'm back, right? And as you know, our job is to wake the dead, even if they don't want it. Today we will be discussing Batman and DC Comics and what do they have to do with devil worshiping. It's gonna surprise you the level of this. As I use the reference of KRS-One, he was talking about Freemasonry and he was saying about row your boat. I'll get the whole thing, but inside of that structure that he was describing is what I'm be breaking down to you, right? So in this, as you can see, I got the little pictures of Batman and its symbolisms to the things that we will be talking about, right? Oh, by the way, this is my book, Street Skelzy, Knock 'em Out the Box. Hold on, let me change my background here. Right? Street Skelzy, Knock 'em Out the Box. It's about two brothers on opposite sides of the law who must team up in order to bring their father's killer or killers to justice. Right? Now, as you know, I don't ask for people to just, donate money. I believe there's no robbery in fair exchange. So I would say, you can go to my merch shop, or you can go on Amazon and purchase either this book or my other book. You know what I'm saying? That way you walk away with something as well. Right. And if you keep buying copies, you can just give them, to other people. You know what I'm saying? To make sure they have it in their hands. Right. Okay. So I'm going to put this down real quick and then I'll bring that back up. But for now, let's get into this. Right. So it goes the truth about DC Comics and the worshiping of Greek gods, demonic gods. Right? Batman as Cronus, Pluto, Samuel, Superman as Zeus, Aquaman as Poseidon, the Wonder Twins, Jan and Janae, as Jennings and Jambreeze. These are wizards, magicians, should we say, right? In Hebrew, they would be pronounced Yanis and Yambreeze, right? So as you can see right here inside the picture, since we're talking about, this is be mainly about Batman and the Wonder Twins, right? So the most of what you'll see will be breaking that down, right? So we have here, we got light, or, the fallen angel of Samuel. So when you see the picture right there, that's the picture of the fallen angel, right? So now we got Cronus, as you can see mentioned inside there, as well as darkness, aka Hades, occupied by Pluto, or what we would say, the devil or Satan. If you didn't know, yes, Pluto, that's what Pluto represents, right? And so first I wanted to point out the town, Gotham, right? And what it means. Gotham means goat town, right? So it says right here, though we tend to think of Gotham as a dark, brooding city constantly on the brink of destruction, the term dates back to medieval English, right? It means goat town, an Anglo-Saxon, which couldn't be further from how we think of New York City today. All right. So again, when we look at Gotham, we take a ghost town. We see the light, which is the archangel, as I said, Samuel, right? And we will be dealing with Pluto and Hades. Now, I love this picture right here with Batman. I'm not a fan of DC Comics by no shape or form, right? But I like this darkness because it gives, it addresses the point in which I'm making. Now you can't really see the devil's horns in that one, but you can see the horns in the one with Robin, right? Now, I was debating on whether or not I would bring this up, but because we got to take into account these names and how they remember we're building this world, right? So in building this, the structures within it, even the characters is a part of that whole world, right? So when we say, remember, Robin's name is Dick Grayson, right? So we taking the word dick means penis, right? Phallus, anything at all. You don't know dick about this means you don't know anything about it, right? But then it goes handle something inexpertly or to meddle, right? So we have the name Dick, and then we go to the name Grayson. Grayson is a name of English origin that means son of the gray-haired man. It is derived from the Old English word Greg, right, which means gray or gray-haired, and son, which denotes son of. The name is often associated with attributes such as wisdom, maturity, and stability. The name is pronounced Gray Sun. I just, anyway. With that, we'll take into account his name, take into account when we think about old Batman. I'm not sure the new generation, but the Batman TV series. It was shaky there on this relationship between Batman and Robin. Right. So in here, right, with I want you to take account of when Batman is using the batarang, right? If you see it in his hand, and we take a picture of Cronus, which is right here, right? We could see the strong similarities, right? Now, if you don't know, Cronus is Pluto's Zeus and Poseidon amongst his daughters. These are his offspring, right? So when we see that symbol there, we understand, and that's when I'm throwing the Cronus into the scenario, because they did, you know what I'm saying? They use this symbol. You see the bat. I mean, you see the hand raising, right? Just like you see right here, just like you see the holding of the utensil, the device, right? You also see him wrapped in the cloth, and we also see this, with Batman as well, right? So remember, we're dealing with symbolism, symbolically, being represented within this story, right? And this is how this was able to advance itself, right? So then let's go into this real quick. The ancient Greek religion and mythology, Pluto was the ruler of the Greek underworld. The earlier name of the god was Hades, which became more common as the name of the underworld itself. Pluto represents a more positive concept of the god who presides over the afterlife. Pluton was frequently conflated with Plutos, the Greek god of wealth, right? And we do know that Batman is probably the wealthiest individual in the DC comics, right? Because mineral wealth was found underground, and because as a chitronic god, Pluto ruled the deep earth that contained the seeds necessary for a bountiful harvest. Right? The name Pluton came into widespread usage by the Elistinian mysteries, in which Pluto was venerated as both a stern ruler and loving husband of Persephone. All right. The couple receive souls in the afterlife and are invoked together in religious inscriptions, being referred to as Pluton and as Core, respectively. Hades was contrasted, had few temples and religious practices associated with him. Right. Then it goes, and he is portrayed as the dark and violent abductor of Persephone, right? Persephone, whatever, right? Right. But now let's evaluate. Let me bring up my book here since I got space now. Let's explore the sophist, right? A lot of people do not realize that the sophist is the Freemason, right? This is what they practice. So if you were to study the sophist, you would have a very broad understanding of what the Mason is building, right? Not necessarily in how they're doing it, right? You would know how they're doing it through studying the sophist, and through these things you will be able to see their tools, right? There, what they're constructing and how they construct it, right? So a sophist was a teacher of in ancient Greece in the 5th and 4th century BCE. The sophists specialized in one or more subject areas such as philosophy, rhetoric, music, athletics, and mathematics. Now, individually, you might not be able to see all of this as one, but we definitely know, when you hear the G and it tells you it's mathematics, right? Geometry, right? Now, we know how athletes and music play a major role in shifting people's perception, right? Philosophy is the main controller of all of this, and rhetoric is the device in which they use. So you have philosophy, right? And then you have rhetoric, right? They taught arity and virtue, or excellence, predominantly to young statesmen and nobility, right? But then we go into the etymology. The Greek word sophist, a wise man, right? So then we heard Dick Grayson, right? So we know this wise man is related to the noun Sophia, wisdom. Since the time of Homer, it commonly referred to an expert in his profession or craft, right? So you could, if you was able to break down your profession or craft, you would be considered, a sophist in the days of Homer, right? Charioteers, sculptors, and military experts could be referred to as sophi and their occupations, right? Pardon me here. Okay, in their occupations. The word has gradually come to connote general wisdom, and especially wisdom in human affairs such as politics, ethics, and household management. This was the meaning ascribed to the Greek seven sages of the 7th and 6th century BCE. So when we talk about magic, right, we can see is connected to the seven sages who used to um right use this information along with whatever craft they was in, whether it's a doctor or whatever the thing may be. So this is how they were these sages, right? The word gives rise to the verb sophizo, right? To instruct, make, learned. And the passive voice of which means to become or be wise or be clever or skilled. From the verb is derived the noun sophist, which originally meant a master of one's craft, and later a prudent man or wise man, right? The word for sophist in various languages come from sophistes, right? The word sophist could be combined with the Greek words to form compound examples, including metaphysics, which roughly translate to experts of celestial phenomena, right? Genophysics or naked physics is a word used to refer to Indian philosophers, disposists, or dinner sophist, as the title of Athreus, right? Different. I'm not gonna get these right, right? A type of physician in the later Roman period. So as we can see, this medical craft, right? And so these were miracle workers. You know what I'm saying? Now the reason why I'm saying this, as you can see, is relating to Hade's wife, right? And if you read more into it, you'll understand he was in this in her glow, like it's basically saying he was into this craft, right? History. In the second half of the 5th century BCE, particularly in Athens, sophists came to denote a class of mostly Athenian intellectuals who taught courses in various subjects, speculated about the nature of language and culture. Speculate is, as we can see with Freemasonry, you have a speculative and an operative, right? So we have like um speculative philosophies, right? And then you have like true sciences, that these are operative, these are things that actually are, versus the things that people speculate and make to be real, right? And employed rhetoric to achieve their purpose, generally to persuade or convince others. Sophists did however have one important thing in common. Whatever else they did or did not claim to know, they characteristically had a great understanding of what words would entertain or impress or persuade an audience. Right? So, when you hear the Brooklyn Magic and these type of things, they actually went and learned this, right? They're giving this information so they could go and cause confusion. That's why I don't mess with the woke community, right? Impress, persuade an audience. Sophists went to Athens to teach because the city was flourishing at the time. It was good employment for those good at debate, right? As we could see with the woke community, which was a specialty of the first sophists. And they received the fame and fortune they were seeking. Pythagoras is generally regarded as the first of these professional sophists. A few sophists claim that they could find the answer to all questions. Most of these sophists are known today primarily through the writings of their opponents, particularly Plato and Aristotle. I'm on the line on whether or not Aristotle wasn't a sophist. I believe he was, right? So, that's just my personal take on it, and I'll give you reasons later, which make it difficult to assemble an unbiased view of their practices and teachings. In some cases, such as Gorgias, original rhetorical works are extinct, right? Allowing the author to be judged on his own terms. But in most cases, knowledge about what individual sophists wrote or said comes from fragmentary quotations that lack context and are usually hostile. Right? We can see that today with this saying community, but we didn't like today. I don't think people understand the art of rhetoric, so they kind of went underground on that, and now it's just teaching the magic trick to those who go in. Everybody else, they don't realize that's what the thing is, right? The Greeks were experimenting with a new form of government, democracy. Therefore, they were navigating how to make decisions without a higher authority. They needed to create laws based on demand and popular votes of the people. Back in the 5th century, they did not have mass media, printing presses, and barely any text. Right? They mostly relied on speech. Now because I highlighted the green, I want to point out they did have mass media, right? They had scripts that they would go and do plays with. Now they might have not been able to reach multiple lands. One individual will only be able to reach X amount of people, but it was still mass media, right? And so they did have printing presses, right? Well, not printing presses, but they did have writing, so we will acknowledge that. They mostly relied on speech, the dialogue, right? So in this dialogue, the rhetoric was allowed to be mastered to its greatest form, right? Speech. This meant that the Athenians needed a strategy for effectively talking to other people in jurors and forums and in the Senate. This is when the sophists began to come about, right? So I just wanted to read, and in the Bible, Psalms 82, where it says, God standeth in the congregation, right, of the mighty. So we hear, standing in the juries, the forums, and the Senate, right? He judges amongst the gods, those with authority. How long will you judge unjustly and accept the persons of the wicked, right? Defend the poor and fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. Deliver the poor and needy. Rid them out of the hands of the wicked. They know not, neither will they understand. They walk on in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are out of course. I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. But ye shall die like men and fall like one of the princes. Rise, O gods, judge the earth, for thou shalt inherit all nations. Right? So inside of that is saying this fromness, this, this righteousness is being overlooked, by Congress, just like how we see today. Those in power, are lining their pockets and, that's where this is at, right? So, don't forget, we're still talking about Batman here. I'm just breaking down, the wife real quick, right? Originally, well, not Batman's wife, but Pluto, right? Which is one of the individuals that he's looking, taking the role of. These are the elements that make up, Batman, should we say, right? Originally known as Sicilians, right? They began to teach Athenians how to speak in a persuasive manner in order to work with the courts and senate. It is not really known how these Sicilians, who came to be sophists, initially grew an interest in teaching others how to speak persuasively. However, the interest in receiving training from the sophists increased. The origins of rhetoric, right? So this would be the origins of this rhetoric that what that was buried and rediscovered, right? And that's where you see like taken from like the 1300s on, right? Sophists could be described both as teachers and philosophers, having traveled about in Greece teaching their students various life skills, particularly rhetoric and public speaking. So when I use, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, they, the Nation of Islam is a Freemasonic group, right? And he'll tell you he the things that he learned from that group. Whereas Martin Luther King, it's through the religious affiliation that you would still get that Masonic connection, right? So it goes, these were useful qualities of the time during which persuasive abilities had a large influence on one's political power and economic wealth. So you can see again why I use, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, right? Okay. Athens became the center of the sophists. Activities due to the city's freedom of speech of non-slave citizens, its wealth or of resources. The sophists as a group had no set teachings, and they lectured on subjects that were as diverse as Semitics and rhetoric to ornithology and epistemology. Most sophists claim to teach excellence and virtue. Again, we look at, these two and what was attributed to them, right? But we don't see nothing moving within that community. It's still on the same path, right? And the management of administration of not only one's affairs, but the city as well. Before the 5th century BCE, it was believed that aristocratic birth qualities qualified the person for octate in politics. However, Pythagoras who is regarded as the first sophist, argued that Atheist and was the result of training rather than birth. So again, we hear this training, and he was a sophist, and he's telling you that you could train somebody in this field. We can also see that with Aristotle and um Alexander the Great, right? So we see him, being his teacher and all of these things, right? So we got and that's why I would like to also point out, these other charlatans, like Brother Polite and young Pharaoh here, but all of these people are a part of, whether you find some of them to be relatable or not, they're all still working for that system. I'm sorry to say it, right? Modern usage. In the modern usage, sophist, or sophistry are used disparagingly, right? A sophism or sophistry is a fallacy argument, especially one used deliberately to deceive. A sophist is a person who reasons with clever but fallacious and deceptive arguments. So when we look, this is why I say, with the woke community and the Egypt arguments and being in Egypt and we really from America that never happened. You right? These arguments is just right here. So you can see the sophists, or the Freemason as I call them, in real time. You could see this in real time. Right, so now let's get back to Batman and Pluto. Pluto and Hades differ in character, but they are not distinct figures and share two dominant myths. In Greece cosmology, the god received the rule of the underworld in a three-way division of sovereignty over the world, with his brothers Zeus ruling the sky, Superman, right? And his other brother Poseidon, sovereign over the sea, right? And so we can see Aquaman. I won't be touching more on them. That was just a passing phase for them, right? His central narrative and myth is on him abducting, right? Right, Persephone, right, to be his wife and the queen of his realm. Pluton, as the name of the ruler of the underworld, first appears in Greek literature in the classical period, in the works of the Athenian playwrights and of the philosopher Plato. So I want you to pay in mind, Pluto, it is very close, to Plato, who is the major Greek source on its significance. Take that in mind. Under the name Pluto, the god appears in other myths in a secondary role, mostly as the possessor of the quest object, and especially in the descent of Orpheus or of the heroes to the underworld. Pluto is Latinized from the Greek Pluton, Pluto's name equivalent to Des Pater, whose name is most often taken to mean rich father. And as again, we know, right, Batman, right, is rich. His father was rich, right, and he inherited this wealth, and is perhaps a direct translation of Pluton. Pluto was also identified with the obscure Roman Orcus. Like Hades, the name of both a god in the underworld and the underworld as a place. Pluto, Pluton in French and German, right, in Italy, became the most common name for the classical ruler of the underworld and subsequent Western literature and other art forms. Right, so now that we see this became right the ruler. Pluto became the ruler before we called him Satan or the devil, right? At this time it was right Pluto, right? So, and remember, we're talking about the underworld. We're talking about him, what his name means, and how we can associate all of this right back to Batman and DC Comics, right? So, in here, right, we see the light. The light coming down, and we see this figure. I'm saying it's the archangel, right? Samuel, and this is the light, the rays of light, right? So let's go into here and let's see. Venom, poison of God, right? And these are the Arabic words, right? I'm not going to go through that. Is an archangel in the Talmudic and post-Talmudic law. A figure who is is the accuser or adversary. Satan in the Bible, in the book of Job, right? So now we see how this archangel Samuel, right? He's basically the accuser, the one who was, basically Satan now, right? And so seducer and destroying angel in the book of Exodus, right? Although many of his functions resemble the Christian notion of Satan to the point of being sometimes identified as a fallen angel, he is not necessarily evil, since his functions are also regarded as resulting in good, right? Such as destroying sinners. So now we should be able to see, right, the Batman, right, Dark Knight, not necessarily this good guy, but not necessarily the bad guy. He works with the police, God, right, the government. And, even though he's a vigilante, they work with him. They got a signal for him and everything, right? He is considered a midrash text to be a member of the heavenly host with often grim and destructive duties. One of Samuel's greatest role in Jewish law is that of the main angel of death and in the head of Satan. Although he condones the sins of man, condones the sin of man, he remains one of God's servants. He appears frequently in the story of the Garden of Eden and engaged and engineered the fall of Adam and Eve with the snake in writings during the Second Temple period. However, the serpent is not a form of Samuel, but a beast he rode like a camel, right? In a single account, he is also believed to be the father of Cain, as well as the partner of Lilith. In early Talmudic and Midrashic literature, he is not identified with Satan yet. Only in later Midrashian, he is entitled head of Satan's, right? As guardian angel and prince of Rome, so now you see he's this guardian angel, right? He is the arch enemy of Israel. By the beginning of the Jewish culture in Europe, Samuel had been established as a representative of Christianity due to his identification with Rome. Right, so then we can see this religious text with it. In some Gnostic cosmology, Samuel's role as source of evil becomes identified with the demigry, the character of the material world. Although probably both accounts originate from the same source, the Gnostic development differs from the Jewish development of Samuel, in which Samuel is merely an angel and servant of God. Right? So then let's go and touch on the Wonder Twins, because as you can see here, right, it's saying that he was teamed up with Lilith, right? So let's check this out and let's see if this connects. See if I'm reaching, right? The Wonder Twins, Zan and Janae, are a fictional extraterrestrial twin brothers and sisters. They came from the skies, right? Superhero duo. First appeared in Hanna-Barbera's American animated television series, the all new Super Friends Hour. The pair can be active, can activate their superpowers by touching their fist and saying the phrase Wonder Twins powers activate. Janae can transform into any animal, and Zan can become water in any state. The pair also have a pet monkey, Gleek, who assists in their crime-fighting activities. They subsequently appear in comics based on the animated series and were later introduced into the main DC comic universe. They have appeared in other media, including the animated series Teen Titans Go and the live-action TV series Smallville, which I'm going to actually go look at that episode because I never saw it. I watched the Smallville, but I've never seen that episode. Clearly, there was some that I missed. Right. In Jewish and Christian tradition, Janae's and Jambres, Hebrew, right, are the names given to magicians mentioned in the books of Exodus. This naming tradition is well attested in ancient and medieval literature and Latin manuscripts of the New Testament, and in Latin writing traditions, their names are known as Gemnes and Membres, right? Hebrew Bible, Janaes and Jambres are not specifically mentioned in the Torah Hebrew Bible, but the Egyptian wise men and sorcerers, two of whom are identified with Janaes and Jambres, the Jewish and Christian traditions, are mentioned in Exodus 7:10 through 12. Now, like I said, you can see this, right? These are magicians. I don't know if you can see the similarity in the names, but as we go on, you should be able to understand how they conflate information and make it, how to take stories, change them over here to draw a mentality, because those people or that information, even though it's transferred into these new names, that information is still there, right? And Moses and Aaron went in unto Pharaoh, and they did so as the Lord had commanded. And Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became a serpent. Then Pharaoh also called the wise men and the sorcerers, now the magicians of Egypt, and they also did in like manner with their enchantments, right? So when they touch their rings together, that's basically an enchantment. And when they saying turn into this, that, and the third, that's their magic, right? Also, sorcerers, now the magicians of Egypt. They also did in like manner with the enchantments. They cast down every man his rod, and they became serpents, but Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods. Right? This is New Testament and Second Temple literature. Right? The names Jannes and Jambres appear in Second Timothy's in the New Testament origin. Right? Says that there was an apocrypha book called the Book of Jannes and Jambres, containing details of their exploits, and that Paul the Apostle was quoting from it. This book, known as the Apocryphas of Jannes and Jambres, the magicians, existed in some Greek fragments presented in the Chester Betty Papyrus, and this is number 16, which has been edited and translated, by Albert whatever, right? And in an extensive epic fragment, which was discovered in 2014. I question that, and was also probably known to the Qumran community, since the Qumran community referred to one of the magicians by the name of Jannes, right? The Testament of Solomon refers to the magicians by the name Jannes and Jambres. Well, I'm just giving you this information. I don't know if you could see the connection in it, right? But I'm just giving it to you. Greco-Roman literature, and the name Jannes, not as of the magician's opponent of Moses, but as the originators with Moses in one Lotopia and Lotopes, right? Of the sect of magicians occur in plenty of elders' natural history, right? Pliny citations is also referred to as, right, these names, right? Philosophy called them sacred Egyptian scribes. The Gospel of Nicodemus also referred to the magicians by the name Jannes and Jambres. In a brief passage cited, right, Numerius said that Jannes and Jambres were able to undo publicly even the greatest of disasters that Moses brought against Egypt. This statement contradicts the Bible's account, according to which the magicians were able to follow Moses' acts only to the second plague inclusive, right? And this is Exodus 8:18. Rabbinic literature now, right? The Babylonian Talmud names Jannes and Jambres as two pharaoh sorcerers. Jannes and Jambres are mentioned several times by name, and Targum pseudo Jonathan, Jewish tradition, and the Targum preserve other legendary lore about the pair. They are called the sons of Balaam, and the unwitting non-Jewish prophet of Peor. It was also claimed that they converted to Judaism and that they left Egypt at the Exodus to accompany Moses and the Israelites. However, they perished on the way, either at the Red Sea or the destruction of the golden calf, or at the slaughter of Korah and his followers. Apart from their opposition to Moses, there are other Akkadian laws and legends about Egyptian sorcerers. It was said that during the end of their days, they had necessary occult knowledge to embark on the journey with the Jewish world to come. They were not welcome, and the angels of the first few heavens fought them vigorously, but they could not evict them due to the potent talmans that they were worn by the wizards. As they entered the fourth heaven, they were met by Michael and Gabriel. Legend says that the battle was very evenly balanced, but in the end, it was the angels who had to fall back. Upon entering the fifth heaven, they were met by none other than Metatron, who did not come at them with defiance or anger, but appeared accommodating, considering the circumstances. After convincing for a short time, the angels was successful in convincing Janaes and Jambres to remove their talisman, leaving them thus vulnerable. Metatron was quick to act and threw them out of heaven with a wave of his hand. And it is said that they lost their memory of the event after that. Right? League with the devil. Right, the early mentions of Janice and his brother and the DeMarcus document states that the two were in league with Belial, who would later be personified as the devil in Christian texts. So now we can see them teaming up with Batman, right? In the Testament of Solomon, a demon who has some connection with the Red Sea replies to the king, I am who was called upon by Janez and Jambres who fought against Moses in Egypt. Right. Similarly, in a later text of the question of Saint Bartholomew, this is 6th and 7th century, Satan says that Simon Magus, Zorus, right, and Janez and Jambres are all my brothers. In the participants of Cyprian, right, 5th century, the great magician of Anticoke Coach relates how the devil called him a clever lad, a new Jambres trained for service and worthy of fellowship with himself. Right. Once visited the garden tomb of Janice and Jambres, and upon arrival was met with 70 demons who resided there. Right, so this is popular within films. I wanted to see this movie, The Prince of Egypt. Right, I can't get it. I'm gonna look for it again. Right. Okay. So now, like I said, I'm not sure if you can see the connection with Janice and Jambres as far as even if they're male and female, this magic, this work, because the magic is gonna come in. We're going to address the magic, right? That's a little bit later. Right, so let's get into Samuel still. Samuel was first mentioned during the Second Temple period, and immediately after the destruction, he was first mentioned in the book of Enoch, after with other rebellious angels. In Enoch 1, he is one of the watchers who descends to earth to compilate with human women, although he is not their leader, with being Simyaza, right? In the Greek of Apocalypse of Barunch, right? He is the dominant evil figure. Samuel plants the tree of knowledge. Thereupon, he is banished and cursed by God to take revenge, he tempts Adam and Eve into sin by taking the form of the serpent. He appears further in the embodiment of evil and the ascension of Isaiah, often identified as Makari, right, king of evil, king of the wicked, right, messenger of evil or angel of inquiry, right, Bakari, right, lord of the wall, or the elect of evil, chosen by evil. The name Baal and Satan are also applied to him, and he gains control over King Manesh in order to accuse Isaiah of treason. Right, the Talmudic Mosaic literature, the Talmudic Mosaic literature, Samuel's role as an agent of evil is rather marginal, but from the 5th to 6th century onward, his name again becomes one of the most prominent among the demonic entities. Samuel has not been identified with the angel of death in the Talmud. Right. In the Exodus Rabbish, Samuel is depicted as the accuser in the heavenly court and tempting to sin, while Michael defends Israel's actions. Here, Samuel is identified with Satan, while Satan describes his function as an accuser. Samuel is considered to be his proper name. He also fulfills the role as an angel of death when he comes to take the souls of Moses, and he calls the leader of Satan's, right? So we can start seeing this dark night, right, and how it plays this part. The title of Satan is also applied to him in the Midrash, Prek de Rabbi Azaliah, right? Where he is the chief of the fallen angels and the 12 ring seraph, right? According to the text, Samuel opposed the creation of Adam and descended to earth to tempt him into evil. Riding the serpent, he convinces Eve to eat the forbidden fruit. His role there might be similar to the Islamic idea of Iblis, who refers to who refused to prostrate himself before Adam because he consisted of fire and Adam merely of dust. The Midrash also reveals Samuel's father, Cain, fathered Cain with Eve, right? In the Midrash, Kinin, he is the ruler of the third hell. Several sources such as Yukut, Shamini, described him as the guardian angel of Esau, relating him to Rome, and one who wrestled with Jacob, the angel, and ordered Abraham to sacrifice Isaac, and a patron of Edom, right? Kabbalish. In the Kabbalah, Samuel is described as a severity of God and is listed as 5th in the archangels of the world of Bra, right? Among his patrons is Esau, the people who inhabit the sword and bring war, the goats, and Shalem demons, and the destroyers of angels. So we know the goats, right? We heard Gotham, right? We know his job. We know the job of Batman. Right? We know what he does. So as we see this, we should understand how you take information to build a character, right? Although both Samuel and Lilith are major demons in early Jewish tradition, right? They do not appear paired until the second half of the 13th century. So now, as we see, right, Samuel and Lilith, right, we see them paired and they working together, right? Lilith is a demon created alongside Adam, originally created for the role Eve would fill, who then becomes Samuel's bride. With her, Samuel creates a host of demon children, including a son, the sword of Samuel, or Asmodeah, right? And we will be touching on that. And the Kabbalic work, treaties of the left emmanuation, Samuel is part of the Quipoth, prince of all demons and spouse of Lilith. The two are said to parallel Adam and Eve, being innate together from the throne of glory as a counterpart. Asmodeus is also mentioned to be a servant of Samuel and married to a younger, lesser Lilith. According to the treaties, God created Samuel in order not to fill the world with, oh no, my fault. According to the treaties, God castrated Samuel in order not to fill the world with their demonic offspring. This being the reason why Lilith seeks to fornicate with men. Right? In the Zohar, one of the Kabbalah's main works, Samuel is described as a leader of the divine force of destruction, being part of, right, Quilpath. He is mentioned again as the serpent rider and is described as having mated with, these are the as you know, when I did the four heads of the devil, these would be, the four heads of the devil as well, as being angels of sacred prostitution. Right? Notably, the same works later called him Azazel, which might be the case of mistaken identity, as Azazel what may be himself in Zoretic lore a combination of the angel Azza and Azrael, right? It is also said that the Baal Shem Tov once summoned Samuel to make him do his bidding. Other traditions. Samuel is also depicted as the angel of death and one of the seven angels, right? The ruler of the fifth heaven and commander of the 2,000,000 angels, such as the chief of all the destroying angels. Now we can, the League of Assassins, I believe, Batman was a part of, right? According to Apocrypha, the Apocrypha of Moses, right? The ascension of Moses and the legend of the Jews, right? Samuel is also mentioned as being in seventh heaven. In the last heaven, Moses saw two angels, each 500 passengers, right, in height, forged out of chains of black fire and red fire. The angels F, anger, and him, wrath, whom God created at the beginning of the world to execute his will. Moses' will was disqualified when he looked upon them, but Metrion embraced him and said, Moses, Moses, thou favorite of God, fear not and be not terrified. Moses became calm. There was another angel in the seventh heaven, difference in appearance from all the others, and frightful mien. His height was so great it would have taken 500 years to cover the distance equal to it. And from the crown of his head to the soles of his feet, he was studded with garling eyes. This one, said Metatron addressed Moses, is Samuel, who takes the souls away from man. Worthy goes he now. He asked Moses, and Metron replied, to fetch the soul of Job the pure. And thereupon Moses prayed to God in these words, oh, may it be thy will, my God, and the God of my father, not to let me fall into the hands of this angel. Right. So then we got Gnostics. Now let me say, check out my book, Street Scalzi, Knock 'em Out the Box. It's available now on Amazon Books, right? Where if you want to support the channel, this is your way of supporting the channel. You simply purchase a book, right? You get something from it. I feel there's no robbery in fair exchange. Even though I'm giving you this information, I still feel like, you might want something in your hands, right? And I don't, so with this show, I don't ask for donations. I simply say make purchases, right? You could buy the book a couple of times and give it to your loved ones, but spread the love. Right. And the Apophycan of John on the origins of the world and hypothesis of the Archeons founded in the Nag Hammadi Library. Samuel is one of three names and the Demirage, whose other names are Yao Debath and Sackless, right? After claims sole divinity for himself, the voice of Sophia, right? Again, we see the sophists coming there, come forth calling him Samuel due to his ignorance, because remember, these are the wise, and on the origin of the world, his name is explained as blind God, and his fellow Archeans are said to be blind too. Right? That's usually the Mason. They don't know that while they're promoting one thing, they're blind to what they're actually doing. This reflecting the characteristics of the Christian devil makes people blind, as does the devil in Corinthians 4. Also, I could take my book down for a minute, right? Sinners. Also, Samuel is the first sinner in the hypocrisy of the Archeon and the first epistle of John. Calls the devil as sinner from the beginning. These characteristics combine with his boasting, conflating the Jewish God with the devil. It appears that of a lion-faced serpent. Although the Gnostics and Jewish originally used the same source, both depictions of Samuel developed independently. Samuel is sometimes confused in some books with Carmel, who appears in the Coptic Gospel of the Egyptians, also as an evil power whose name is similar to words meaning like God, but Kamel with a Y missing. The name might be explained because the Jewish tradition, the snake had the form of a camel before it was banished by God, right? Antipherian. right? Samuel is known as one of the seven archangels. Saint Gregory gives the seven archangels as Arnel, right? Gabriel, Michael, Orpheus, Raphael, Samuel, and Zerachel. Right. They are all imagined as having a special assignment to act as a global Zizdigist, time spirit, each for periods of about 360 years. Right. Shimara in the Quran. According to the Quranic retelling of the story of the Exodus, in the 20th chapter of Surah, a figure called Simrai is blamed for tempting the Hebrews into worshiping the golden calf, while Mufasifir, right, remains undecided about the identity of the samurai. Abraham Ginger proposes that samurai is a corruption of the Talmudic accuser, Archangel Samuel. The name functions The same functions is applied to Samuel in the Madrik Perki de Rabbi Eliezer, right? The Arabic letter Ra is supposed to have entered through a nickname for Samuel, Somran, right? Also see, right? So we got Sophia. Remember, we was talking about the Sophists, right? So Sophia, Greek, Coptic, is a major theme along with knowledge, right? Gnostic, among many of the early Christian knowledge theologies grouped by the Hestrigologist Irenaeus, right? Knowing, or men that claim to have a deeper wisdom. Gnostics in the 17th century term expanded the definition of Irenaeus groups to include other syncretic faith and the Greco-Roman mysteries, right? And Gnostic Sophia is a female figure analogous to the human soul, but also simultaneously one of the feminist aspects of God, right? Gnostic held that she was the Sezigi or female twin of Jesus. So again, when we see the Wonder Twins, right, we can see again how these twins, but in this case, right, being the twin of Jesus, i.e., the bride of Christ, and the Holy Spirit of the Trinity. So we know that, the Holy Spirit was considered the female, right? She is occasionally referred to by the term, right, Achmoth, right, and as Prunico, right? In the Nag Hammadi text, Sophia is the lowest Adion or anthropic emanated of the Godhead. Right. So when we talk about God, G.O.D, even though the G is the sophist, right, the prostitute, right. So she's still the lowest of the Godhead, and so we can see this connection again, right, to the sophist. So Besides, what her name, and the Wonder Twins and these type of things, right? So then we go back to Pluto. Oh, the name Pluton does not appear in Greek literature. Right, hold on. We're halfway through this, okay? Literature and the Archean period. And Hestian theology, the six children of Cronus. Remember, we said Cronus and how that's one of the elements of Batman is Rhea, right? Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, Hades, Demeter, and Hestia, right? The male children divided the world into three realms. Hades, Poseidon takes Perphonia by force from her mother, right? So then we got the Sophist again, right? And contest of Zeus, Pluto's wealth, again, Batman being wealthy, appears in the theology as the child of Demeter and Lesion. Find Pluto, who goes upon the whole earth and broad back of the sea, and whoever meets him and comes into his hands, that man he makes rich and bestows much wealth upon him. Like I said, we do know Batman is probably the wealthiest character in the DC universe, as far as I know. You know what I'm saying? The union of Demeter and Lesion, described also in the Odyssey, took place in a fallow field that has been plowed 3 times. And that seems to be a reference to a ritual compulsion and sympathetic magic to ensure the earth's fertility. The resemblance of the name Plutos and Pluton, it has been noted, cannot be accidental. Pluton is lord of the dead, but as Personus husband, he has serious claims to the power of fertility. Demeter's son, Plutus, merges in the narrative tradition with his son-in-law, Pluto, redefining the implacable chariot driver. Remember, we'll be getting into that in a second. Hold on. Chariot driver Hades, whose horse trampled the flowers of earth, right? That the underworld god was associated early on with success in agriculture activities is already evident in Hesiod work and days lines, right? 465 to 469. Pray for Zeus of the earth and pure Demeter's to make Demeter's holy grain sound and heavy. When first you began plowing, when you hold your hand and the end of the plow tail and bring down your stick on the back of the oxen as they draw on the pole bar by the yoke straps, right? Let's look at Bruce Wayne. Let's understand his name. Bruce is a masculine given name of Scots origin. It is derived from the surname Bruce, which originated from the Scottish place from brick, meaning willow land in the Gaelic language. The name Bruce is also related to the French word brushwood, and the name Bruce is often associated with traits like strength, honor, and resilience. The name Bruce was made famous, right? And then, so that's Bruce, but then we got Wayne. The boy's name boy's name in English origin. So the first name would be a surname. Bruce would actually be his surname, and Wayne would be his name, right? His first name. And so if we was to read it in that way, cart driver or wagon maker or wagon driver of the willow lands or brushwoods, right? This, you know, there's fertileness, right? There's these grains and stuff like that. We could see as we went back, right, and flowering the earth and the trimples, right? We could see this relation. We can see how this world is built. Right, we can see it. You cannot be blind at this point when we take all of the elements of Batman, we take it to these references of these other gods in their roles, and we see how this was built, right? Pluton and Plutos. Pluton was one of several euphemic names of Hades, described in the Lilith as the god most hateful to mortals. Pluto says that people prefer to name Pluton giver of wealth because the name Hades is fear provoking. So, right, we can look at Batman in the Dark Knight and, rather know him as Bruce, this giver of wealth, than as Batman, the person who's gonna come and, put in that work, right? The name was understood as referring to the boundless riches of the earth, both the crops on its surface. He was originally a god of the land and the mines hidden within it. Now, we also know Bruce Wayne's wealth, and if you understand his, how his family came into this, it would all coincide with this story or this element, Pluto, right? This is sometimes taken as confusion of the two gods, Pluton and Plutos. Wealth held or acquired in theoretical significance and antiquity. As the Lord of abundance or riches, Pluto expresses the aspects of the underworld, God that was positive, right? Symbolized in the arts by the horn of plenty, right? By means which Pluton is distinguished from the gloomer Hades, right? The Hellenization or Latin literatures considered Pluto a Greek god to be explained in terms of the Roman equivalent des pater or Orcus. It is unclear whether Pluto had a literary presence in Rome before Ennis. Some scholars think that rituals and beliefs pertaining to Pluto entered Rome culture and with the establishment of the secular games. And this was in 249 BC. In that Das Pater was only a translation of Pluton. In the mid first century BC, Cyril identifies Pluto with Das, explaining that the earth is all its powers is plenty and secure. The father Das. Forgive me real quick. Oh no, I got time. A name which is the same as Dives, the wealthy one, right? As is the Greek Pluton. So we can see Pluto clearly is the riches that represents, right, while he's going to be this crime fighter. So it's this duality, right? This is because everything is born of the earth and returns to it again. During the Roman imperial era, the Greek geographer Strabo, 1st century AD, makes a distinction between Plato and Hades. And writing of the mineral wealth of ancient Ibria, Roman Spain, he says that among the Tudides, it is Pluto and not Hades who inhabits the region down below. In the discourse on mourning by the Greek author Lucian, there's a 2nd century AD, Pluto's wealth is the dead he rules over in the abyss. The name Hades is reserved for the underworld itself. So, Hades would be Gotham, right? And Pluto would be Batman itself, right? Once they separated the two and made one a location, right? In the Greek religious practices, Pluto was sometimes seen as the Chthonic, Zeus Kithaneos, or Zeus whatever, or at least as having functions of or significance equivalent to those of Zeus, but pertaining to the earth's or underworld. In ancient Rome and Hellenistic religion, Pluto was identified with a number of other deities, including Sumerius, the Roman god of nocturnal thunder, Februs, the Roman god from whose purification rites the month of February takes its name, and the Extrian god of the underworld, the synthetic god Cepheus, regarded as Pluto, Egyptian's equivalent, and the Semitic god Mut. Mut was described by Phileo of Byblos as the equivalent of both Thanos, death personified, and Pluto. The ancient Greeks did not regard Pluto as death per se, right? So let me I just added this in there, the February thing, right? Februs is an ancient Italic god of purification who was worshipped by both the Roman and Estrian, right? He was also worshipped as the god of the underworld by the Etruscans, right? For them, Februs was also the god of riches, money and gold, and death, both connected loosely to the underworld in the same nature manner as with the better known Roman god Pluto. Februs' name could mean the underground one in the Etruscan language. Februs may have become a Roman Febris, goddess of fever, right? Latin means fever. These are possibly connected with the sweating of fever, which was considered a purgative washing and purification process. Is probably named in honor of the more ancient Februa, also Februara festival, the washing and purification. Holy month was hence the English February, the month name for the purification festival, which occurred on the 15th of that month. So on the 15th of this month, we'll have the purification, right? These purification activities occurred at about the same time as Lupercalia, the Roman festival in honor of Fanus, and also the wolf of nurse, or the wolf who nursed Romulus and Remus, during which expiatory sacrifices and ritual purification were also performed. Because of this coincidence, the two gods, Phineas and Febru, were often considered the same entity. All right. I just wanted to add that in there real quick, side notes, right? The mythology, right? We got a few more. We got like good 20 pages left. The best known myth involving Pluto and Hades is the adoption of Persephone. 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 Right. Matter of fact, I could look at, I can listen to it real quick. Hold on. Persephone, right? Persephone. I've been saying it wrong this whole goddamn time. Persephone. Right? Also known as Kor, the maiden, the earliest literature version of the myth, are a brief mention of Hesod. Let me make sure I can get this right. Hesius, Theogony, and the extended narrative of the Homeric hymn to Demeter. Right? In both those works, the ruler of the underworld is named Hades, the hidden one. Hades is an unsympathetic figure to benefices, unwillingness to emphasize. Increased usage of the name Pluton and religious inscriptions and literature texts reflected the influence of the Eleusinian mysteries, which treated Pluto and Persephone as a divine couple who received initiation in the afterlife. As such, Pluto was disassociated from the violent abduction of Kor. Two early works that give the abductor god's name as Pluto are the Greek mythograph, traditionally known as the Library of Apollodorus. This is 1st century BC, and the Latin fable of Hyginus, right? The most influential version of the abduction myth is that of Ovid, right? Who tells the story of both Metamorphosis, Book 5, and Fasti, Book 4. Another major retelling, also in Latin, is the long unfinished poem De Raptu Persephone, on the abduction of Persephone by Claudine, right? And this is 404 AD. Ovid uses the name Dis, not Pluto, in these two passages. And Claudine uses Pluto only once, translates the editor. However, sometimes supplied the more familiar Pluto when other epithets appear in the source text. The abduction myth was a popular subject for Greek and Roman art and recurs throughout the Western art and literature, where the name Pluto becomes common. Pluto in Western art and literature below. The narrative details for Ovid and Claudine influenced these later versions in which the abductor is named as Pluto, especially the role of Venus and Cupid, by manipulating Pluto with love and desire. Throughout the Middle Ages and Renaissance, and certainly by the time Natal Conti influential mythology, right? The tradition pertaining to the various rules of the classical underworld concealed into a single mythology that made few, if any, distinctions among Hage, Plato, Dis, and Orcus, right? Offerings. Unlike his freely procreating brothers, Zeus and Poseidon, Pluto is monogamous, right? And is rarely said to have children. In Orphic texts, the nymph Melone, Melino, right, is the daughter of Prophesian by Zeus disguised as Plato. That's strange, because isn't that his daughter? And the emasculate, the kindly one, are the offering of Pervices and Zeus, often identified as Pluto. The Augustine poet Virgil says that Pluto is the father of the Furies, right? But the mother is the goddess Nox, not his wife Persephone, right? The lack of a clearer distinction between Plato and Cretan Zeus confuses the question of whether, in some traditions now obscure, Persephone bore children to her husband. In the late 4th century AD, Claudine's epic on the abduction motivates Pluto with a desire for children. The poem is unfinished, however, and anything Claudine may have known of these traditions is lost. Right. Justin Myrtle alludes to children of Pluto, but neither name nor emasculate them. He's another person. Mentions the son of Pluto in the 14th century mythograph Baccacokia recordings, a tradition in which Pluto was the father of the divine personification, veneratio, reverence, noting that she had no mother because Persephone, the Latin name of Persephone, was sterile. Persephone, right? And the Fairy Queen, 1590, Edmund Spenser invents a daughter for Pluto, whom he calls Luciferia. The character name was taken from the 16th century mythograph of Natal Conti, who uses it as a Latin translation of Greek philosopher light bearer and regular epithet of Hecate. I know I'm saying this stuff wrong. Right? Spencer incorporated aspects of the mysteries into the fairy queen. We'll be getting into that as well, right? That plays a major part with Freemasonry itself and, women worship, vagina worship. Right. Orpheus was regarded as the founder and prophet of the mysteries called Orphic, right? Dionysic and Bacchic, right? Mythologized for his ability to enhance even animals and trees with his music and chant and trance. He was also credited in antiquity with the authorship of the lyrics that have survived as the Orphic hymn. Among the hymns of Pluto, Orpheus' voice and lyre playing represented a medium of revelation or higher knowledge of the mystery cult. In his central myth, Orpheus visited the underworld in the hopes of retrieving his bride, relying on the power of his music to charm the king and queen of Hades. Greek narratives or Orpheus' descent and performance typically named the ruler of the underworld as Pluton. As for instance, in the Bibliotheca, the myth demonstrates the importance of Pluto, the rich, as the professor of a quest object. Orpheus performing before Pluto and Persephone was a common subject of ancient and later Western literature and art, and one of the most significant mythological themes of the classical tradition. The demonstration of Orpheus' power depends on the normal opposite of Pluto. The Augustine poet Horace describes him as incapable of tears. However, portrays a steely god as succumbing to Orpheus' song so that with iron cloaks he wiped his tears. Right? An image renewed by Milton, such notes drew iron tears down Pluto's cheek. Right? The Greek writer Lucian suggests that Pluto's love for his wife gave the ruler of the underworld a special sympathy or insight into lovers parted by death. In one of the Lucian dialogues of the dead, Pluto questions Persephone, the first Greek hero killed in the Trojan War, who wishes to return to the world of the living. You are then in love with life, Pluto asks. Such lovers we have here in plenty, but they love an object which none of them can obtain. Explains, this is Protelius, explains, like in Orpheus in reverse, that he has left behind a young bride whose memory, even the lift waters of forgetting, have not erased from him. Pluto assures him that death will reunite them someday, but Protelius argues that Pluto himself should understand love and its importance, and reminds the king of his grant to Orpheus and to Alcestis. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Who took her husband's place in death and then was permitted at an instant of Hercules to return to him. When Persephone intercedes for the dead warrior, Pluto grants the request at once, though allowing only one day for the reunion. Right? Mysteries and cults. We get in there, people. We're almost there. All right. We got what page are we on here? 32. We got little over 10 pages, right? As Pluto gained importance in the embodiment of agricultural wealth within the mysteries. From the 5th century BC onward, the name Hades was increasingly reserved for the underworld as a place. Neither Hades nor Pluto was one of the traditional 12 Olympians, and Hades seems to have received limited cult, perhaps only at Elis, where the temple was open once a year. During the time of Pluto, the Athenians periodically honored the god called Pluton with a stewing of couch. At Ilias, Pluton had his own priestess. Pluto was worshipped with Persephone as a divine couple, right? And Sparta, as well as at Ilias, where they were known simply as God Theo and Goddess Thea. Right. In the ritual text of the mystery religion preserved by the so-called Orphic and Bacchic gold tablets from the late 5th century BC onward, the name Hades appears more frequently than Pluton, but in reference to the underground place. Pluton is the ruler who presides over it in harmonious partnership with Persephone. And the end of the 4th century BC, the name Pluton appears in Greek metrical inscriptions. 2 fragments, tablets, Greek Pluto and Persephone jointly, and the divine couple appear to welcome figures in materialistic if you can. Pardon me for 1 second. I want to look up something real quick. All right. This is just take me a second, people. Right. Okay. Okay. So let me come back here, right? So we can do this. Right. Mysteries, gold tablets, partnership with Persephone, but by the end of the 4th century, the name Pluton appears with Greek metrical inscriptions, 2 fragment tablets, Greek Pluto and Persephone jointly, and the divine couple appear as welcoming figures in a metrical epitaph. Right? I know that even below the earth, if there is indeed a reward for the worthy one, the first and foremost honor nurse shall be yours next to Persephone and Pluto, right? Hischius identifies Pluto with Ubius, but other ancient sources distinguish between these 2 underworld deities. And the mysteries, Ebulius plays the role of a torchbearer, possibly a god for the initiates to return. And the view of Louis Richard Farnell, right, was originally a title referring to the good counsel. The ruler of the underworld was able to give, and which was sought at Pluto's dream oracles. By the 2nd century BC, however, he had acquired a separate identity. Right? It goes Orpheus or Pluto addresses the god as strong spirited, was strong spirited and all receiver who commands death and is master. Pardon me, y'all. Had to grab some blackberries real quick. Right. Him, strong spirited and on receiver, who commands death, is the master of mortals. His titles are given, right? Good counselor, and to him, typograph Pluto's dwelling in the Tartarus simultaneously as meadow, thick shade, and dark, where the Acrian encircle the root of the earth. Hades is again the name of the place, here described as windless and its gates through which Pluto carries pure Demeter's daughter as his bride, are located in the attic cave within the distinct of the route from Persephone's meadows to Hades across the sea. To him includes: you alone are born to judge deeds, obscure and conspicuous, holiest and illustrious, ruler of all. Friends, God, you delight in the worship aspect of reverence. Come with favor and joy to the innate. I summoned you. The hymn is one of several examples of Greco-Roman prayers that express a desire for the presence of a deity and has been compared to similar epaulettes and Acts of Thomas. Magic innovations. The name of both Hades and Pluto appear in the Greek magical papyrus and curse tablets, with Hades typically referring to the underworld as a place, and Pluto regularly invoked as the partner of Persephone. Five Latin curses tablets from Rome dating to the middle 1st century BC promise Persephone and Pluto an offering of dates, figs, and a black pig. After curse is fulfilled by the desired deadline, the pig was a characteristic animal sacrifice to chronicle deities, whose victims were almost always black or dark in color. Right? A set of cursed tablets written in Doric Greek and found in a tomb address a peasant lord to all, sometimes taken as the title of Pluto, but more recently through thought to be the magical name for the corpse, is not elsewhere in the athletes of Zeus or in the tablets may invoke daemon like Abisex, right? Schism. I'm trying to see if I want to go through all of this with y'all. Okay. In the Aleskian scene, Kevin Clinton attempts to distinguish the icograph of Hades, Pluto's, in the Dios and 5th century verse painting that depicts scenes from or related to the mysteries in Clinton's schism. Pluton is a mature man, sometimes even white-haired. Hade is also usually bearded and mature, but his darkness is emphasized in literature descriptions representing in the art by dark hair, right? Okay. And Clinton's schema, Pluton is a mature man. Oh no, my fault. Pluton's most common attribute is the scepter, but he also often holds a full of overflowing a cornupus. Hayes sometimes holds a horn, but it is depicted with no content and should be understood as a drinking horn. Unlike Pluton, Hades never holds origin attributes such as stalk or of grain. His chest is usually bare or only partly covered, whereas Pluton is fully robed. Exceptions, however, are omitted by the author. Pluton stands often in the company of both Demeter and Core, and sometimes one of the goddesses, but Hades almost always sits or reclines, usually with Persephone facing him. Confusion and disagreement about the interpretation of these images remain. Right? The keys of Pluton. Attributes of Pluto mentioned in the Orphic hymn to Pluto per are his scepter, key, throne, and horse. And to him, the keys are connected to his capacity for giving wealth to humanity, specifically the agricultural wealth of the year's fruit. Pasagian explains the significance of Pluto's key and describes a wondrous carved cedar chest at the temple of Hera and Elis. Numerous deities are depicted, with one panel grouping Dionysus, Persephone, and the nymphs and Pluto. Pluto holds the key because they say that what is called Hades has been locked up by Pluto, and that nobody will return back again therefrom. Cities, Pergenia, and nothing that the keys are an attribute of Plato as a scepter is of Jove, Greek Zeus, and the trident of Neptune, Poseidon. Right? A golden key was laid on the tongue of initiates by priests of Elysius and was a symbol of the revelations they were obliged to keep secret. Right? The key is among the attributes of other internal deities such as Hecate, Anubis, and Persephone, and those who act as guardians and timekeepers such as Janus and Joan, right? One of the three mortal kings who became judges in the afterlife is also, right, holder of the keys and a priestly doorkeeper in the court of Pluto and Persephone, right? Pardon me here, trying to eat some berries. The Orphic theologian are notoriously varied. The Orphic cosmology influenced the varying Gnostic theologies of late antiquity. Clemency literature preserves a theology with explicit Orphic influence that also draws on Hesiod, yielding a distinctive role for Pluto. When the primordial elements came together by orderly cyclonic forces, they produce a generative sphere, the egg from which the primordial Orphic entity pain is born and the world is formed. The lower part of the element called Pluto. I ain't gonna go through that.